Imagine a coloured pencil set that was designed by us colourists. This set would have a practical and easy to understand blending system that arrives pre-arranged in perfect dark, medium and light trios, taking the work out of identifying undertones and blend groups. Pastel and skin tones will be separated and organised, with specific pencils to correct skin that appears, for example, too red and needs to be neutralised. The pencil names will be printed big enough to read at a glance and in a clear, dark font. The cores will be thick and sturdy, with an oil-based formula that keeps a beautiful point for ages between sharpening. The barrel would accurately reflect the colour of the pigment as it appears on paper, rather than how the lead looks, often two very different shades. Light fastness isn't a requirement for the typical colourist, so these pencils could skip the rigorous and expensive artist grade testing and be sold at an affordable price. Finally, a certain friendly YouTuber beginning with C will have already created a handy chart for free that you could fill in to swatch your colours. I think you've guessed by now that I've found a set that meets all of these requirements, and here it is. This is the Starjoy Gold set of 120 coloured pencils, developed by Laurie Green, owner of Colour My World channel here on YouTube. She worked together with Andy, a manufacturer in China who's been in business for over 20 years. And before you shout at me that these must be copycat Chinese pencils that have probably been rebranded, they really aren't. These pencils are originals and not white labelled, meaning that they can't have another company name slapped on them later down the line. The colours and names were chosen by Laurie and her group members, utilising the colour wheel to curate each category. So let's start from the top, packaging. Tin is fairly standard, as are the plastic trays that hold the pencils. They are quite flimsy, so do be careful when lifting them out. This doesn't really matter to me because I decant my pencil sets into cases usually. There are 3 trays in total. Now, as for the pencils themselves, the pencils have a thick 3.8mm core, which I'm hoping is coming up nice and clear on screen for you. And this is much thicker than your typical budget pencil. So the thick core, thin barrel design means they're light in the hand and easy to hold for long periods of time. However, they are round, so they will roll off desks. But again, this doesn't matter much to me as I usually colour on my lap out of a case. The leads are predominantly oil-based, which means they're akin to a harder pencil like Polychromos rather than the buttery Prismacolor. Everyone has their preferences when it comes to hard and soft, oil and wax pencils, so you'll know whether these will suit you or not. I've slowly become a fan of oil leads despite having struggled with them to start with. The 2 things that you really need to remember with oil pencils is that they need to be layered lightly rather than with a heavy hand, and the paper needs to be good quality. Smushing Prismacolors onto copy paper is easy. Layering oil pencil pigments requires patience, and it will garner far better results on a decent paper stock. Laurie advises that you think of the laydown of Starjoy pencils as if they are layers of cellophane, light, transparent layers built one on top of the other to gradually create a solid colour. So I'll grab you another pencil and we can have a look at what's on them. So each pencil has a number, there we go, which go in order from 1 to 120, and it's got a name as well. This one is Laurie Green. The printing is in matte black, so you won't have to squint trying to read gold lettering or silver lettering with light bouncing off the metallic foiling. As I mentioned earlier, the font is really large and clear, which I think is marvellous because I can see what I want at a glance. The names are right at the top of the pencil, so you aren't going to lose the info as the pencil gets shorter, and you're less likely to rub off the writing while you're handling them. As well as a number and a name, you'll see there's also a letter code. This particular one is YG on each pencil. Now, it might be handy for me to show you my chart now to better explain the system that these pencils have. So here we go. This is the chart that I have created, and you'll be able to download this for free. So here is how the colours are split. The first 51 pencils, I'll just hide these just so that we concentrate on what I'm talking about. The first 51 pencils are split into blendable sets of 3, and the letter code stands for its undertone. So yeah, I don't need to zoom you in, I think you can see that all right. So pencils 1 to 3 are reds, they've got the R code. Pencils 4, 5, 6 are orange reds, pencils 7 to 9 are red oranges, and so on. Now these trios are all light, medium and dark, ideal for blending together. And they've been arranged in such a way that if you want a blue-green combo, for example, you can jump straight to pencils 31, 32, 33, and it's already sorted for you. This is quite the game changer, especially for beginner colourists, because it takes all the guesswork out of it. Nowhere on the leaflet that comes with the pencils does it explain what these letter codes are though. And if you're not used to using the colour wheel, you wouldn't necessarily know that RO means red, orange and what have you. So I have labelled each and every single one with what they mean, so that you know. The leaflet is being updated, by the way, in the next round of manufacturing to include a bit more information and in a larger format as well. So that will be an improvement. Most of the blends are dark first, then medium, then light, but a few of them are out of order to my eyes anyway, like this one here. I would have ordered them tawny, marigold and then mango, which I've shown here in the blend box. So I designed this chart so that you can swatch each individual colour and then you can create the blend right next to it so you can see how they'll look together without having to use a scrap bit of paper. After the trios come the colour categories. So dual tones, this one here, are pencils 55J to 66J, and these are your fully saturated colours. These are the colours that you would go for if you wanted a true red or a true blue, etc. It's kind of annoying how they're not in perfect rainbow order, but I can live with that. Then we have the muted and pastel tones. These are either light tints of colour, which we know as pastels, or slightly more desaturated or muted colours. There are some particularly lovely colours here, though not many of them are what I'd consider extremely light. On the whole, this set of 120 leans more towards bright and vibrant than subdued and subtle, but hopefully if we do get a bigger set in future, we'll have a couple more of those unusual delicate tones. Next up, we have Skin. This is a really nice compilation of shades that could be used for a number of skin tones, though I would have appreciated some cooler browns, as these are all quite reddish. And the next category is the colour correction, which can be used to neutralise colours. So if you've coloured a portrait with your skin tones, but you feel it's too red or orangey, you can apply a layer of, say, the Spearmint or the Misty Morning over the top, and it will counterbalance that red and take the heat out of it. The general rule is that whatever colour you want to neutralise, you should use the colour on the direct opposite side of the colour wheel. So let me just grab my colour wheel and I can show you that a bit better. So for example, we've got violet down here and then yellow is directly across from it. So we know that violet will cancel out yellow. If you haven't got a colour wheel, I'd really recommend purchasing one because they're a great tool. But of course you can Google image one and that'll work just as well. Finally, we have the greys, and I have to say that I think this category lets down the set for me because these are all warm greys to my eye with no cool option. I think the blue grey and the green grey could have been discarded and replaced with some lighter greys, and there should definitely be two distinct temperatures of grey. The black seems very crumbly and it broke multiple times, which was unusual because the rest of the pencils sharpened and kept their points really, really well. But apparently this is a known issue and Andy's currently working on changing the formula for that. This set does not come with a white pencil, and this was a conscious decision on Laurie's part, one which I agree with wholeheartedly, because as much as I love and need a white pencil in my life, no budget sets of pencils have a white worth a damn. Get yourself a Luminance or Prismacolor white, or even a Derwent Drawing Chinese white, because I've heard that that is really good even though I don't have it. So at the end of the chart, I've left space for you to swatch some of your own trios along with that blending box. As with all my charts, it's totally free to download and the link will be in the description box below. Really hope you find it helpful. So how do these pencils colour? Well, as I mentioned earlier, they're oil-based. They're on the harder side and the paper really matters. Now I decided to colour a page in Hannah Carlson's Guldkorn book. But you can also find this image. This isn't even the right book. But you can also find this image in her book Jewellery Box. So I want to show you what I've done. If you've got me on social media, you would have seen it already. Let's see, where are you? There we go. So this is what, there goes the sharpener. This is what I coloured. Are we on screen? Yeah. And because these are Star Joy gold pencils, I really wanted to create something gold. So the paper in Hannah's books is just lovely, and these pencils tuck to it really well. You do have to keep reminding yourself to colour very lightly and not expect effortless blending like with Prismas. But as you can see, it doesn't matter that these are budget pencils, they can still produce wonderful results with a bit of practice. So when I posted this piece on social media, the likes and comments just blew up, which I was super chuffed about because I had quite a few people ask for a tutorial, which means it must have really impressed you. I coloured it on my lap watching Archive 81 on Netflix and didn't really think into it much. So I wasn't, expecting that, and I was really pleased at how it was received. Now, I only sharpened the pencils twice throughout this whole piece because the point lasted so well. I think that's really important to mention. So I'm going to now demonstrate the combos and the technique that I use for the gold. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'll do just enough so that you can replicate it yourself if you want to. And if you want to skip past this tutorial, you can go straight to the end where I'll be discussing pricing and ordering info. Okay, so when I was preparing to colour this key, I had a quick look online at pictures of keys. So I specifically typed in things like old key, antique key, decorative key, and this kind of thing came up. So I could see where all the highlights and shadows were on those pictures, and it helped me to decide where to put them on the page. So I've printed this out so that I can show you just a few different areas of the gold that I coloured. And here are the colours that I used. So we've got maize, mango, tawny, sepia and black. So I think these are orange, yellows and oranges. And then the sepia is from the colour correction and the black is the black. So first thing I did after I looked at the colours, the highlights and where I wanted those to be, is I chose the colours. So all that was swatching out some different colours that I thought looked quite goldish, and then I came up with this palette. So it's trial and error, that's what you've got to do. It's got kind of an antique brassy goldy look to it. It's not a bright gold, it's got quite an aged weathered look. So if that's what you're after, then that's what you do. These pencils will achieve that for you. All right, so I decided my highlight on the main block of the key here was going to be down the right hand side. So I first built up my colour with my darkest brown, which is the sepia. I always start from dark to light, you don't have to. I know people have different preferences, but let me see, can I zoom? I don't really want to zoom too much because I don't want to take away from the example so you can see what I'm looking at. So sharp pencils and light layers, I just filled in this left hand side. And you've kind of got to gauge how far out you go, but you can just do it lightly for now and then build up more of an area after. So on the right hand side, I also wanted a little bit of darkness, but not as thick as the left. So I'm just making sure that we have a little stripe of darkness here, and it just serves to show that roundedness of the key. Try and make it look a bit more 3D. So when you've done that really, really lightly, we go to the next lightest colour, which is the tawny, and we're going to go over that and make that a little bit thicker so it starts coming out towards the centre. I'm overlapping the sepia, and that will start to blend those two colours together. I'm also adding a little bit here to the right hand side, but again I'm keeping this really slim and narrow because I want our highlight to be over here. So the next colour is the mango, and this really is quite a warm yellow orange. So again, just bringing that out, blending it over, and a very little bit here on this side, and we've still got a really distinct white patch over here, as you can see. Then we've got the maize, which is our lightest of colours, and here I'm colouring everywhere but a very slight slither of white because I still want to keep the integrity of the white of the paper as our main highlight. So once you've done that, you have plotted your basic colour positions. Now we have to build up the layers to build up the colour. So grabbing the sepia again, that's what I'm starting to do. I am making sure the pencil is sharp, and these do keep a sharp point, as I said, for a long time. And you can rotate the pencil as well, because after a bit of colouring you will start to get a bit of a chamfered end, and you can rotate it to get that point. So I'm just going over again very lightly and building up that colour. You'll need to do this a few times. It's a process, and like I said, it's something that some people absolutely love to do and some people loathe it. I used to be in the latter category, but I have in recent times become more of a fan of slow and steady. So I've built a bit more sepia into there. Next is the tawny, and I'm using kind of oval strokes like this and slowly rotating my pencil when I feel it start to get slightly blunt. Again, just bring a little bit here. But keeping those layers light all the time. Back with mango. And every time I add a new colour, I'm going over the edge of the last colour that I used, so that we are naturally starting to blend. And then the maize as the lightest one. Still keeping all the time that bit of white. So now we're on our third layer, coming back in with the sepia. And as I said, it really does depend on the quality of the paper as well. So it depends what paper you're using as to how much tooth there is and how many layers you need to do to fill that tooth. Obviously you can use a burnishing pencil if you wanted to, but I always like to burnish with the pencils themselves if I can. And we have the tawny. Mango. There's not very much dust or debris coming off these pencils at all, which is great. And then maize. So this side is pretty much perfect for me. Just making sure I do this side as well. I think I forgot this side, didn't I, this time around. So adding in a little bit more of the tawny and so on and so forth. Alright, now you will notice that this does not look as dark as this, and that is because I included some black. Now I don't want to go too heavy on the black, but I do think it's important to add it right to the very edges to maximise your contrast as much as possible. So really sharp black pencil, really light layers as well, because we don't want it to look blocky. We just want it to darken that sepia enough that it looks more rounded. And I think straight away you can see the difference. So both sides, thinner on the right hand side, a little bit thicker on the left. Very, very light layers. And then you can come back in with your sepia and your subsequent colours if you feel like they need blending out again. But I think that looks pretty good. So I'm just using the sepia just to creep across this bottom area a little bit. Again, I'm just always looking back at this, and you can use this as a reference for where you want to put your light sources if you're doing a key or this particular key. Please use my photos as references, you know, my coloured pages. I don't mind that at all. You just get on with it. I've got no sort of ownership over anything I do, really. I just want people to have fun and learn. So all I'm doing now is I'm coming with the sepia underneath these little leafy things and just making sure that we've got some darkness under there to show that these are overlapping the gold, so they would naturally have a shadow. You can of course deepen that shadow right up underneath with the black if you feel it's necessary. But all in all, it just serves to make a really nice looking gold. And of course, me being me, I want to touch up some things and, you know, carry on blending and blending, but I think you'll agree that that looks pretty good. So let's see, what else can I show you? Because it really is the same thing all the way around. I guess maybe this part of the key here, the top of the key, which is sort of circular, you might want to see how that's done. So again, starting off with the sepia, I would look at the picture of my reference key, and sometimes it's easier to convert your reference photo to black and white so that you can clearly see the contrast between your light, medium and dark areas. So yeah, I'll just do this little curve here. So with the sepia, I would come under this area because I feel like this is overlapping this part and there would be natural shadow. And then just slowly blend that out. This paper that I'm using, by the way, I should tell you what it is, shouldn't I? So that you can get some if you want, because it's working really nicely on this paper. I'm just looking in my drawer now because I never seem to remember what I'm using or get organised. So let me see. Oh great, I don't actually have... I'm going to put it on the screen because I know that I ordered it and I can find it on my past orders. So yeah, just ignore that whole bit. Right, let's carry on. So like I said, just coming under here and then all across the top, a really narrow area, and then some across here as well, because I think this part will be the peak. I watched a Laurie video today actually, and she talks about cylinders and peaks, and that's what this is. So this will be the lightest part because it's the bit that sticks up the most and the bit that the light catches. Okay, so coming around here, and around about here you'll see that there might be a bit of a shadow there as well. Always handy if you're a beginner as well, like I just said you should do with mine, is to look at other people who've coloured the same image, and they, you know, where they've put their highlights and shadows can really help you deciding where yours go. You know, if you really are at a loss, you know, it's not copying. I will defend that till the end. It's not copying, you know, just to look at highlights and shadows on a reference image. It's building your knowledge, building your skill. And no artist can, you know, just pluck something out of their brain and draw it, or pluck something out of their brain and see light sources immediately. I mean, as you get, you know, more professional and experienced and stuff, you'll get better at doing that. But reference images are always handy for everybody. So make sure that you do that to see your lights and darks. Okay, so I've just put the sepia in the places where I think it will need to go, need to be darkest. And let's just put a little bit over here as well. There we are. Next we've got our tawny. So we're coming in exactly the same as we did on the lower half of the key. And thickening out where we've put the sepia. Again with nice light layers, and as you can see the pencils have not lost any of their sharpness whatsoever. Next is mango. And then you've got your maze. Don't forget to try and keep some white for maximum contrast. There we are. And then we would come in with our darkest colours again, so the sepia, to deepen up that colour, add some more layering, and begin to burnish. But again, it's personal preference and different papers on as to how many layers you'll have to do to get that burnished look. There we are. I've got tawny. Mango. And the mango is the most yellowish of the lot, so it really is bright. It adds that pop to the gold. Should get a little bit more of the tawny here, so we've got a slightly better blend on this dark bit in the centre. Oops, and then obviously you can use your maze as a bit of a burnisher on its own just to fill in the gaps. I always seem to use the lighter colour of the gradient to fill in some of the gaps. And then of course your final step will be to add some of the black in the darkest areas. I'm going to come around here as well. Again, just not being too heavy with it. But it will make all the difference. And once you've added your black in, it really is a good idea to come back in with the sepia and blend that out. When we want a smooth metal, we don't want any harsh lines. So when you're happy that it's blended, and again, this is just a quick demonstration, so it's not going to be perfect. When you're happy with it, that's what you'll end up with. So the very last thing that I did when I finished this key was to add some drop shadow. And I think I used Warm Grey 3, I didn't write it down. But again, it's just looking at photos or guessing where you think you want your drop shadow to be. It depends where the light source is, and that's totally up to you. But with this one, I decided to do my drop shadow on the right. Whether that's correct artistically or not, I don't know. But that's just how I did it. And all I did was I got my grey really, really sharp. And in fact, it might be better if I show you close up. But I made sure to leave a very thin stripe of white or light grey right up to the line of the key, and then I began with a bit more of a darker grey. So you can see I've left a slight gap pretty much all the way around. Oh, and that's what gives it a bit of a 3D look. So let's try that now. Obviously it's not going to look amazingly 3D because we haven't coloured it all, but so what I would do is I would just leave that gap really thin, like a millimetre gap, and then colour around the edges. like this. And then as you come out away from the key, you just get your layers really, really light, so you're barely even touching the paper. So you want it to be darker right here, up next to the gap, and then really, really light as it fades out. And that's what created the look. You can see on the tassel here, you can also do the shadow sort of slightly below and to the right. So that's what I did here. You'll see little gaps between the shadow and the line work, and they sort of drop down and away from the tassel itself. So that's what I did, and it's, you know, you can just keep looking at my image, and if you're doing this page in the book and you want to follow exactly my colours and things, go for it, and then you know, use this image to decide where you're going to put everything, and it should turn out brilliantly. I would love to see it. Obviously I'm not going to colour this whole key because I think I've given you enough of a demo to complete it on your own, and you've got the finished piece there to reference. So yep, there we go. Okay, now the tutorial's out the way, let's finish by talking about the price and availability. These pencils are budget pencils, I keep saying that. They're not artist grade and they've been priced as such. They're on Amazon US for just over $33, which is very reasonable in my opinion. However, availability outside of the US is patchy at present. They are on Amazon UK, but at a hugely inflated price of almost £80. And I'm not entirely sure why this is, but Laurie would definitely agree the pencils are not worth that. I wouldn't advise that you pay that much unless you were absolutely desperate for them and decided that you could afford to overpay. Andy in China is fully aware of this and is working to come up with a solution, possibly a website where he can ship out the pencils directly, though I imagine this would come with long waiting times unless he could find a distributor in the EU. As it's currently Chinese New Year, he's on holiday at the moment, so I'm hoping we will hear more news on this soon. Plus, the pencils have only been out since November, so they're bound to be teething troubles. The main thing is they're listening and making those necessary changes. Definitely follow Colour My World for all the updates on these pencils because Laurie will be the first to know. Andy's company's family run and customer service is paramount, so if you were to find one of your pencils is off centre or there's any problem with them, he will replace it for you. Open stock availability is also being considered too. Overall, I really like this set and I feel like I'll be using them often. The family organisation is just brilliant for being able to find a blend within seconds, and I find the numerical ordering and the letter coding so practical. There are some cons, of course, like the lack of browns, the black breakage issues, and minor things like spelling errors, which are being corrected next time. If you prefer colouring slowly and lightly and are willing to be patient in your colouring style, you'll love these pencils. They're not the best pencils you'll ever use, but they are what you make them, and as you've seen, they can produce some beautiful results. I'll leave links in the description, and I'm really curious to know what you all think of them, so please make sure you leave your comments and questions and I'll do my best to try and answer them. Finally, as with all my reviews, I was not paid or pressured for my opinion. In fact, I was categorically told I didn't have to do a review at all in exchange for the pencils. They were a gift for personal use. So please be assured that you are getting my 100% genuine opinion. As you know by now with me, I'm always honest. I may be enthusiastic and some people see that as disingenuous and think it must be a result of some financial agreement or coercion from the company, but I'm proud to say this has never been the case in my 6 years of colouring and it won't ever change. The quality of my reviews isn't always the same because I sometimes type my reviews out first, which I think you can guess I've done on this one, purely because I'm terrible for suddenly losing my words and forgetting what I'm trying to say. I think it's the tablets I'm on, I don't know. So if I need to give a lot of information and I know that, then I'll type it up first and it might sound more professional or scripted, but you know, I hope that's not what you think. Anyway, that was a long-winded ending, so I will just say I hope you enjoyed the review and I will see you soon on Colour with Claire.